The Zathy Empire ruled every corner of the galaxy. Their crystal starships had traveled between worlds for 3,000 years, turning disorder into structure and bringing progress to untamed lands. From the heart of their territory, where massive cities drifted among the clouds, all the way to the distant edges where unknown races awaited contact. Their control was total and complete. Admiral Vexar gazed through the enormous window of his command ship, watching distant suns sparkle against the darkness. His reptilian skin glowed with a rich purple shade that showed his royal bloodline, while the gold devices implanted in his head pulsed with the calm rhythm of absolute confidence. His crew moved smoothly at their posts, displaying the quiet skill that had made the Zathy the unquestioned rulers of known space. His assistant walked up to him with the careful steps that tradition required. "The Moran star system has fallen under our control, Admiral. Their leaders have given up completely." Vexar gave a small nod, still watching the stars. One more race joins the Empire's growing collection. The Morans would be recorded in the records, their inventions examined, their way of life saved in the great libraries, and their planet brought into the Imperial fold. This was simply how things worked. How many have we conquered now? Vexar wondered aloud. Over 4,300 species, Admiral, plus 217 dead civilizations we've found evidence of. 4,000 species. Yet Vexar sensed an odd feeling of something missing. He'd climbed the ranks by being careful, by examining every battle, every victory, every piece of information stored away. Recently, though, he'd spotted things that bothered him. Missing pieces in the historical files. Tiny errors that others might ignore? Aid Kessenol. Vexar turned toward his helper. "Get me the full navigation maps for the outer edge territories." "Right away, Admiral. Every single sector. Everyone, even the restricted areas." Kessenol paused briefly. "Admiral, accessing some of those maps needs special permission from the top commanders." "Then request the permission. I need to see all of it." 3 days passed. Vexar now sat by himself in his personal quarters, surrounded by glowing three-dimensional displays showing the galaxy in its entirety. The Empire's domain stretched before him like an enormous network, with shipping lanes and military bases marking their complete supremacy. Yet there, at the far reaches of the spiral arm, where Terra's sun should exist, something made absolutely no sense appeared, a bubble of nothingness. No trade paths crossed through it, no military ships patrolled it, no scout teams had ever submitted reports from anywhere inside its edges. The maps labeled this area only as Quarantine Zone Omega-7, with a note that made Vexar's skin ripple with puzzlement. Permanent Forbidden Zone by command of the High Leaders, created 300 years earlier. Why would the Empire seal off empty space? Vexar started digging through the old files, using his high rank to view records that very few beings had ever accessed. He discovered fragments, sections of reports that had been deliberately edited, mentions of something labeled the Terra incident, with every detail hidden beyond his clearance. Most interesting, he found one sentence in an ancient battle report that had somehow avoided the editors. "Human fighters proved harder to defeat than we expected. Suggest total orbital destruction of all populated planets." Humans. Vexar had never encountered such a race. But here sat proof they'd once lived somewhere in that forbidden area. A race that had apparently resisted fiercely enough to require orbital bombardment. If they'd been wiped out, though, why keep the quarantine active for 3 centuries? The Admiral invested weeks collecting more fragments. Old supply orders mentioning the Terra campaign. Medical files treating wounds from something called kinetic weapons. Technical reports studying strange inventions that seemed to break accepted rules of science. Most revealing, a promotion document that showed many officers earning combat awards for fighting in the Sol system. Sol. Vexar checked the name against star maps and discovered it buried in forgotten files. A yellow star on the inner boundary of Quarantine Zone Omega-7. According to the ancient records, it had been home to beings who identified themselves as humans. The reports were thin, but they created a picture of a young civilization that had barely started exploring space when the Empire discovered them. The more Vexar uncovered, the more mysteries appeared. If the humans had been simple, why had the military operation taken 3 full cycles to finish? Why were there references to unexpected technological growth and rapid changes in enemy fighting styles? Why had the Empire lost 17 massive warships against a race that shouldn't have been any threat? Most crucially, why was the zone still sealed if everything inside it was destroyed? Vexar's fixation on the puzzle intensified daily. He started ignoring his regular work, using all his time in the archives or staring at the star maps of the Forbidden Zone. His crew noticed their admiral's transformation, but nobody risked questioning him openly. Still, rumors started spreading throughout the fleet. One evening, while Vexar examined the incomplete records for the 100th time, he reached a choice that would alter everything. He activated his secure communicator and transmitted coded messages to 3 of his most reliable captains. All were officers he'd fought alongside for many years. All were eager enough to join him into the mysterious, and all were interested in what existed in the darkness beyond the Empire's boundaries. Captain Vorth of the massive warship Dominion replied first. A seasoned fighter whose red scales showed the ceremonial marks of 50 battles, he'd always craved a challenge matching his abilities. Captain Yellen of the attack vessel Supremacy answered next. Her silver scales identified her as part of the Explorer class, and she'd built her name charting unknown areas of space. Captain Z of the heavy battlecruiser Conquest responded last, but his reply was the most excited. He'd always believed the Empire had grown too relaxed, too sure of its power. The thought of meeting an unknown challenge attracted his warrior nature. Vexar summoned them to his flagship for a private meeting. In the protected briefing chamber, he revealed everything he'd learned about the strange quarantine zone and the race called humans. "This doesn't add up," Captain Vor commented, examining the star maps. "If this region was cleansed 300 years back, why is it still off-limits?" "Maybe," Captain Yellen offered, "there are valuable resources there that the High Command wants kept hidden, unusual minerals or ancient relics." Captain Zekmore settled back in his seat, his scales changing to dark blue that meant careful thinking. Or maybe something lived through it. Silence filled the room. The notion that anything could survive orbital bombardment by the Empire's fleet seemed almost impossible. Yet the proof suggested that something remained in that zone, something significant, important enough to keep it locked away for 3 centuries. "Whatever the answer," Vexar declared at last, "we'll never discover it unless we go look. The High Command has hidden this secret far too long. We deserve to know what exists in our own galaxy." The 4 officers used the next several hours organizing their mission. They'd need a force big enough to face any danger they might encounter, but small enough to avoid catching the High Command's notice. 12 ships felt right. 4 massive warships to supply heavy weapons, 4 attack cruisers for scouting and mobility, and 4 support ships to manage supplies and signals. Assembling such a group without raising questions would require time and smart planning. Each captain would need to pick their crews from among the most dependable and bold members of the fleet. They'd need equipment for a long mission since they had no clue what they'd discover in the quarantine zone. Most importantly, they'd need to get ready for the chance that they were mistaken about the humans being gone. If something had lived in that forbidden area for 3 centuries, it had figured out how to stay invisible from the Empire's detectors. That implied a level of advancement and cleverness that deserved caution. During the next months, the 4 officers quietly built their exploration fleet. They used their position to request ships for extended guard duties and deep space survey missions. They collected equipment under the excuse of normal military training. Most carefully, they chose crews who could be counted on to follow commands without asking too many questions. The evening before they left, Vexar stood by himself on his bridge, looking at the 11 other ships that would travel with him into the mystery. Each ship represented the height of Zathy engineering. Their protective barriers could deflect any known attack. Their advanced engines could travel enormous distances instantly. Their sensors could find a single living thing on a world from light years distant. Surely, whatever existed in the quarantine zone couldn't withstand such might. As his fleet got ready to jump into faster-than-light travel, Vexar experienced both eagerness and worry. He was about to solve one of the Empire's biggest mysteries. To visit a region that had been forbidden longer than most beings had lived. History would recall him as the admiral who opened the last frontier. He couldn't have guessed that history would recall him for something completely different. that his name would come to mean not exploration, but the start of the collapse of everything the Empire had created. The faster-than-light engines powered up with a deep vibration that echoed through the hull. 12 ships disappeared from Imperial territory, taking with them the dreams and goals of their crews. None suspected that they weren't explorers heading into mystery. They were messengers bringing news to humanity that their long separation was ending. The stars before them contained secrets that would shake the galaxy to its core. In the darkness of the quarantine zone, something waited. Something that had used 300 years getting ready for this moment. The Empire had taught the humans many things during their first meeting. Soon it would discover that humans had been excellent learners. The jump from faster-than-light travel was perfect, just as Admiral Vector had anticipated. His fleet of 12 ships appeared at the boundary of Quarantine Zone Omega-7. Their sensors right away starting to examine the space in front. What they discovered challenged every assumption. Admiral. The sensor operator's voice held confusion. I'm detecting numerous energy readings throughout the system. Big ones. Vexar walked to the sensor station, his gold implants pulsing quicker as he understood what he was seeing. The display revealed dozens of contacts spread across the solar system, orbital stations, space colonies, mining structures, factory complexes that matched anything in the Empire's central worlds. That's not possible, Captain Vorth stated from his spot at the weapons station. This system was meant to be dead, completely destroyed. Run a complete analysis, Vikstar commanded. I want to understand what we're seeing. The information that returned made no sense based on everything the Zathy understood about science and engineering. The readings revealed structures that seemed to exist in several dimensions at once. Energy flows that broke the basic rules of physics. Most troubling, the signature pointed to a level of technological progress that should have been impossible for any race in this part of the galaxy. Admiral, the signals officer announced. I'm picking up manufactured transmissions throughout the system, coordinated messages between the different structures, and, sir, some are aimed at us. What kind of transmissions? Basic math sequences followed by what looks like a language decoder. They're attempting to start communication. Vexar felt his scales change to the deep blue color that showed interest mixed with wariness. Whatever existed in this system wasn't just alive and technologically advanced, but smart enough to try peaceful first meeting. This wasn't what the archives had suggested about humanity. Start a connection, he commanded. Let's hear what they want to say. The main screen flickered and showed an image that made several of the bridge crew step back in shock. The being that appeared was clearly not Zathy, but neither did it look like any of the known races in the Imperial records. It had light-colored skin, matching sides, and most oddly, small eyes placed in a fairly flat face. But what struck Vexar most was its look. This creature appeared relaxed, sure of itself, and totally not surprised by their coming. I am Commander Sarah Chen of the Terran Federation, the being announced in flawless Zathy. Welcome to Sol System. I guess you are Admiral Vexar of the Zathy Empire. The use of his name sent a chill through Vexar's scales. How could they possibly know his identity? His fleet had only just come, and their approach had been missed by any Imperial detectors. How do you know my name? Vexar asked, trying to keep his voice calm. Commander Chen smiled, revealing small white teeth. We've been watching your fleet since you departed Zathy space 6 days back. Your messages weren't as protected as you believed. We know why you're here, Admiral. You're searching for answers about what occurred 300 years ago. You're human, Vexar stated. It wasn't a question. Yes, we're the race your empire tried to eliminate, the ones you assumed you had destroyed totally. Chen's look stayed pleasant, but something cold appeared in those small eyes. We've been waiting a long time for the Empire to come back. Around the bridge, Vexar's officers shared worried looks. This wasn't how first meeting with a simple race was meant to happen. The humans were supposed to be amazed by the Empire's better technology, thankful for the chance to join the Galactic Society under Imperial control. Your records claim that this system was cleansed, Vexar said cautiously. How did you make it through? Your records are missing information, Chen answered. Yes, you attacked our worlds from orbit. You murdered billions of our kind. You wrecked our cities and contaminated our air. But you made an error. You thought that ruining our planets would ruin our determination. The display changed to reveal images that made Vexar's implants pulse with shock. Huge space homes, each big enough to hold millions of beings. Ships built for generations that extended for vast distances. Secret bases constructed inside asteroids and moons. The humans hadn't just survived the Empire's assault. They had flourished. While your empire was occupied conquering the galaxy, Chen went on, we were rebuilding, studying, becoming stronger. We've had 3 centuries to learn your methods, your technology, your flaws. We know all about you, Admiral. All of it. That's impossible, Captain Vore interrupted from his ship. No race could advance so much in such little time. Our technology is the product of millions of years of growth. Your error is thinking that progress follows a straight line, Chen replied. When your existence depends on it, change can be remarkably quick. We had wonderful teachers. Teachers? You, Admiral, your empire. Every ship you launched against us, every weapon you fired, every strategy you used, we studied all of it. We learned from our losses, and then we improved on what we learned. BXR felt growing worry. This talk wasn't going according to any process he knew. First meeting with a new race was supposed to be simple. The Empire would show its better power. The new race would give in and joining would start. But these humans seemed neither impressed nor scared by his fleet. I have 12 massive warships, Bexar said, letting a note of warning enter his voice. The strongest ships in the galaxy. Surely you can understand the sense of working together. 12 ships. Chen nodded carefully. Yes, we counted them. Impressive ships. But Admiral, you seem to be working under a wrong idea. You believe you came here as conquerors. But you're really visitors. Unwanted visitors, I'm afraid, but visitors all the same. Before Vexar could reply, his sensor operator announced with clear alarm. Admiral, I'm reading huge energy buildups throughout the system. Something's occurring. The combat display lit up like a celebration. Energy readings that had appeared like passive stations suddenly showed their real purpose. Weapon structures, guard stations, shipbuilding centers, and coming from hidden spots throughout the system. Ships that challenged every rule of Imperial ship construction. The human ships were smaller than the Zathy warships, but they moved with impossible smoothness through space. Their outer shells seemed to shimmer and shift, sometimes looking solid, sometimes see-through, and there were hundreds of them. As I mentioned, Chen's voice stayed casual. We've been getting ready for your return. We want to make something very obvious to you, Admiral. This is Terran territory. It has been Terran territory for 300 years. You are not wanted here. You dare challenge the Empire? Vexar's scales changed to the bright red of anger. You are a single race in a single system. We control thousands of planets. Yes, you do, Chen said. For the moment, but that's going to change. You see, Admiral, you've just made the same error your ancestors did. You've thought that because we're human, we must be weak. That because we're small in number, we must be powerless. That because we were once your victims, we will forever be your victims. The human ships started to move into positions around the Imperial fleet. They didn't come straight at them, but instead took spots that would let them strike from many directions at once. It was a classic battle move, one that Vexar knew from his own combat education. You have 36 hours to leave from Terran territory, Chen stated. This is your sole warning. After that time passes, we will treat your presence here as an act of war. The boldness of it shocked Vexar into brief silence. A single race separated in one system was threatening the Empire. It was beyond understanding. It was crazy. You can't be serious, he finally said. Do you have any clue what you're up against? The Empire has fleets that could block out the sky of every planet in this system. We have weapons that could break worlds. We have resources beyond your imagination. Yes, Chen replied calmly. We know precisely what you have. We've been watching you use it on others for 3 centuries. But, Admiral, there's something you don't seem to grasp. We're not the same race you battled before. We've changed. We've adjusted. We've become something different. The display revealed close-up images of the human ships, and Vexar felt his certainty start to shake. The ships used design features he had never witnessed before. Hull shapes that seemed to bend space around them. Weapon systems that appeared to exist partly outside normal reality. Most troubling, he could see that the humans had somehow combined technology from many different races. Zathy energy systems, Miran protection generators, core engines, and other parts he couldn't recognize. How? He whispered. Easy, Chen answered. We learned from everyone you conquered. Every race that fell to your empire, every technology you claimed as yours. We've been taking in refugees, Admiral. Survivors who got away from your invasion fleets. They brought their understanding with them. And we've used 3 centuries mixing it into something bigger than the individual pieces. The understanding hit Vexar like a physical strike. The Empire's biggest strength had been its variety, its power to take in the best technologies and ideas from each conquered race. But somehow the humans had been doing the identical thing, creating their own technological foundation from the survivors of imperial growth. This is your last warning. Chen's voice had lost all friendliness. 36 hours, Admiral. Use that time well. The communication link ended, leaving Vexar and his officers staring at a display full of impossible ships placed in perfect attack positions around their fleet. The Admiral looked around his bridge, seeing his own doubt reflected in the faces of his crew. Admiral, Captain Vor's voice came through the intership communication system. What are your commands? Feeler straightened his shoulders and made his scales return to their normal purple color. He was an admiral of the Zathy Empire, heir to 3,000 years of unbroken victory. No single race could oppose the Empire's strength, no matter how advanced they claimed to be. We move forward as planned, he declared. Set the fleet in standard attack positions. Power all weapon systems. Bring shields to maximum strength. Admiral. Captain Yolen interrupted. Maybe we should think about their warning. We came here looking for information, not war. There will be no backing down, Vexar announced. The Empire does not deal with rebels and criminals. These humans will accept Imperial rule or they will be eliminated, just as they should have been 3 centuries back. As his fleet moved into battle positions, Vexar felt the usual rush of eagerness that came before fighting. Soon, the humans would understand the cost of opposing the Empire. Soon, their impossible ships and impossible technologies would be turned into wreckage floating in the emptiness. He couldn't have known that in the hidden parts of the human fleet, old soldiers were sharing dark smiles. They had waited 300 years for this moment. 300 years to show the Empire what humanity had learned from their first terrible meeting. The hunters had come back to find that their targets had become predators, and the real lesson was about to start. Admiral Vexar watched the countdown clock on his command display as it reached 0. 36 hours had gone by since the human warning, and his fleet stayed in Sol's system, weapons powered and shields at full strength. Around him, his officers waited for the command that would start the battle. All ships signal ready for fighting, Admiral. Captain Vor stated from the Dominion. The humans have kept their positions but made no hostile moves. Vexar nodded, studying the combat display. The human ships still surrounded his fleet in that strange formation, keeping what looked like a respectful distance. Their actions suggested either total confidence or total insanity. He guessed it was insanity. Open a connection to all human ships, he commanded. Let me talk to their commander. The main display flickered to life, showing Commander Chen exactly as she had looked before. Her look was calm, almost regretful, as if she was attending a funeral instead of preparing for battle. Admiral, she said simply. Have you chosen to leave? The Empire does not leave, Vexar replied. You have had your opportunity to surrender peacefully. Now you will experience the results of your resistance. Chen closed her eyes for a moment, and when she opened them again, Vexar saw something that chilled him. Sadness. I'm sorry it has reached this, she said quietly. We really hoped you would be different, that you would have learned something from your past. But I guess some lessons can only be taught through action. Enough talking, Vexar growled. All ships. Fire. The Imperial fleet released its fury in a matched attack that should have turned the human ships into scattered atoms. Energy beams that could melt through a planet's surface shot across space. Advanced torpedoes capable of destroying entire cities streaked toward their targets. The emptiness between the fleets lit up like a new star forming. And then something impossible occurred. The human ships simply weren't there anymore. Status. Vexar shouted as his weapons found empty space. Admiral! His sensor operator's voice broke with confusion. The targets just disappeared. No faster than light signatures, no travel trails. They just vanished. That's impossible. No ship can. The sentence was stopped as the Conquest Captain Zemo's heavy cruiser suddenly shook under a terrible impact. Alarms started screaming across the communication channels as similar strikes hit 6 other ships at the same time. Where are they shooting from? BXR demanded, watching as his combat display showed his ships taking damage from weapons that clearly didn't exist. "Unknown, Admiral," the combat officer replied, his scales pale with fear. "I'm reading impact signatures, but no firing locations. It's as if the shots are coming from nowhere." Captain Yellen's voice came through the communication system, tight with pain. "Supremacy taking heavy damage. Hull breaks on deck 7 through 12. Whatever they're using, it's going right through our shields like they're not there." Vexar stared at his displays in growing horror. The pride of the Imperial fleet was being methodically destroyed by an enemy he couldn't even see. His shields, the most advanced defensive technology in the galaxy, were useless. His sensors, capable of finding a single molecule at space distances, couldn't locate the attackers. "Admiral," his communications officer called out. "Incoming message from the humans." Commander Chen appeared on screen again, but now she was clearly aboard a warship. Behind her, Vexitar could see human crew members working at stations that looked nothing like anything in the Imperial records. "I told you we had learned from our previous meeting," Chen said. 300 years ago, your empire taught us that normal tactics would never be enough to beat superior numbers. So, we created unusual ones. As if to show her point, another of Vexar's ships, the destroyer Retribution, simply broke into pieces as invisible weapons tore through its hull with perfect accuracy. "What are you using?" Vexar asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Phase shift technology," Chen replied matter-of-factly. "We learned to exist partly outside your reality. Your sensors can't find us because we're not completely in your dimension. Your shields can't stop us because we're shooting from angles that don't exist in three-dimensional space. That's impossible," Vexitar argued. "The rules of physics are more bendable than your empire thought." Chen finished. "When your survival relies on it, you learn to think outside normal limits. The refugees from Alter Prime brought us physics theories your scientists rejected as impossible. The Korak survivors taught us about dimension control. The vegan resistance shared their understanding of space-time distortion. We mixed it all into something new. Another ship, the battlecruiser Victory, was suffering terrible damage." Captain Tivar's desperate voice came through the communications. "We can't battle what we can't see. Request permission to back out. There will be no retreat," Vexar roared. But even as he said it, he knew his situation was hopeless. His fleet was being torn apart by an enemy that could strike from anywhere while staying completely invisible. "Your weapons are impressive," Chen continued talking casually, as if she wasn't currently directing the destruction of the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. "But they're built to fight enemies who follow the same rules you do. We stopped following those rules a long time ago. The Dominion, Vexar's most powerful warship, suddenly tilted to one side as something tore through its engine section." Captain Vor's voice, usually so steady and confident, was now edged with panic. "Admiral, we've lost main power. Whatever hit us, it's like they knew exactly where to strike." "Of course we know where to strike," Chen said, apparently hearing the message. "We've been studying your ship designs for 3 centuries. We know every weakness, every vulnerable spot, every critical system. Your technology hasn't changed much since the First War. Ours has changed beyond your power to understand." As if to prove her point, the human ships suddenly reappeared all around the Imperial fleet. But now they were inside the formation, having somehow appeared within the protective space of Vexar's own shields. The human ships were nothing like the sleek crystal ships of the Empire. They looked living somehow, their hulls flowing and shifting like breathing things. Weapons came out from what had looked like empty space, targeting critical systems with impossible precision. "How?" Bigzar whispered, watching as his proud fleet was methodically taken apart. "We learned the most important lesson of all," Chen replied. "We learned to adjust. Your empire has used 3,000 years conquering races that fought the way you expected them to fight. Races that used similar technologies, similar tactics, similar strategies. But we're not like them, Admiral. We're human." The flagship's weapons officer spoke up desperately. "Admiral, should I target the human commander ship?" Vexitar looked at the combat display, trying to identify which of the living-looking ships might be Chen's command ship. But as he watched, he understood something that made his scales turn white with terror. The human ships were all the same. There was no command ship, no clear leader, no single weak point he could target. "They're networked," he breathed. "They're all sharing the same combat information. Destroy one and the others instantly adjust." Very good, Admiral. Chen nodded with approval. Another lesson we learned from you. Top-down command systems are a weakness. Single weak points can be used against you, so we created a spread-out command system. Every ship is a command ship. Every captain is admiral. Destroy half our fleet and the rest fights just as well. The battlecruiser Supremacy exploded in a brilliant flash of light, its power cores overloading as human weapons found their exact target. Captain Yolan's final message was simple. Tell the Empire. Tell them we were wrong. Vexter closed his eyes, feeling the weight of 3,000 years of imperial pride crushing down on him. This wasn't a battle. It was an execution. His mighty fleet, the most powerful force ever assembled, was being methodically destroyed by an enemy that fought according to no known rules of war. Why? He asked, opening his eyes to look at Chen's image. Why don't you just destroy us all at once? Chen's look grew sad again. Because we're not like you, Admiral. We don't enjoy killing. We're doing this to send a message, not to satisfy violent urges. Every ship we disable instead of destroy, every crew we let escape in life pods, every captain we spare. It's all part of the lesson we're teaching. What lesson? That the age of the Empire is over. That there are things in this galaxy stronger than your fleets, smarter than your strategies, and more determined than your goals. We've used 300 years preparing for this moment, Admiral. 300 years learning everything we could about you while you learned nothing about us. The heavy cruiser Conquest was the next to fall, its hull splitting open like a flower as something tore through its support structures. Captain Zekmore managed to get his crew to the escape pods before the reactor failure, but his ship was gone. Admiral, his communications officer reported, we are receiving give-up signals from the Defender and the Vanguard. Both ships have lost weapons and engines. Vexar looked around his bridge at his remaining officers. He saw fear in their faces, but also something else. The growing understanding that everything they had believed about the Empire's invincibility was wrong. Your fleet is finished, Chen said gently, but you still have a choice. Give up now, and we'll allow your surviving crews to return to Imperial space. Keep fighting, and we'll be forced to destroy you all. And if we give up, Vexitar asked, his voice barely audible, then you go home. You report what you've seen here. You tell your high command that humanity is no longer hiding in the shadows. Tell them that the quarantine they created to keep us locked in was really protecting them from us. Tell them that their empire's biggest error was teaching us to be better than they are. The Admiral looked at his combat display one last time. Of his 12 proud ships, only 4 were still able to fight, and they were hugely outnumbered by human ships that could attack from impossible angles with weapons that ignored every known defense. All ships, he said quietly. Stand down. Lower shields and power down weapons. A smart choice, Chen nodded. We'll guide you to the edge of our space. From there, you can return to your empire and deliver our message. What message? Biegzar asked. Commander Chen's image smiled, but there was steel in her eyes. Tell them that humanity remembers. Tell them that we've learned from every lesson they taught us. And tell them that if they ever enter our space again, we won't be as kind as we were today. The transmission ended, leaving Vexar alone with the wreckage of his goals and the terrible knowledge of what the Empire would soon face. The humans had given him a show of their power, but he understood that it was only a fraction of what they were capable of. As human ships moved to guide his damaged fleet out of the system, Vexar wondered if he was carrying a warning to the Empire or a death sentence. The hunters had come back to find that their targets had become something far more dangerous than they could have ever imagined. The real war was about to start. The great council chamber of the Empire had never witnessed such disorder. Admiral Vexar stood before the curved table where the 12 high overlords sat in their crystal thrones. His once proud uniform now showing the marks of his defeat. Behind him, 3-dimensional displays showed the wreckage of his fleet and the impossible recordings of human ships that could exist outside normal space. This is crazy, High Overlord Zanari announced, his ancient scales changing to the deep red of outrage. You claim that a single simple race destroyed the pride of our fleet, that they possess technology beyond our understanding. Show them, Vexar said quietly to his assistant. The recorded images began to play again, showing the human ships appearing and disappearing like ghosts, striking with weapons that seemed to fire from nowhere. High Overlord Tamos leaned forward. her silver implants pulsing rapidly as she studied the information. These readings are impossible. Our sensors would have found any normal hiding system. They're not using normal technology, Vexar explained for the third time. The humans have somehow learned to exist partly outside our reality. They've mixed technologies from many races into something totally new. Impossible, another overlord scoffed. No race could advance so much in such little time. These must be fake, some attempt to cover up your failure. Vexar felt his scales darken with shame and anger. I have served this empire faithfully for 40 years. I have conquered 17 races and brought glory to our people. I would not fake such an embarrassing defeat. Then explain it. High Overlord Vexathera commanded from the central throne. At 3,000 years old, she was the oldest of the overlords and the final authority in the empire. How could we have missed such a threat for 3 centuries? Because we didn't want to see it, Vexar replied. The quarantine zone wasn't just keeping the humans locked in. It was keeping us unaware. We convinced ourselves that the threat was gone, and we stopped paying attention to what was happening in that part of space. The chamber fell silent as the meaning sank in. For 300 years, while the Empire had been expanding in other directions, humanity had been growing stronger in their hidden refuge. What are their numbers? High Overlord Thomas asked finally. Unknown, Beakstar admitted. They have factory capacity that matches our central worlds, but it's spread across hundreds of hidden facilities. They could have millions of ships for all we know. And their goals, they made it obvious. They consider themselves to be at war with us, and they have no interest in discussion or surrender. They want revenge for what we did to them 3 centuries ago. High Overlord Zanari slammed his fist against his throne. Then we destroy them, gather the Grand Fleet, activate every ship in the Empire. We'll turn their entire system into space dust. With respect, High Overlord, Beakstar said carefully. That approach failed once before. The humans have studied our tactics for 3 centuries. They know exactly how we fight, and they've created counters for everything we might try. What do you suggest? High Overlord Vexatha asked. I suggest we prepare for a war unlike any we've ever fought. The humans won't come at us directly. They'll use the same tactics they used against my fleet. They'll strike from unexpected angles, using technology we can't counter against targets we can't predict. As if called by his words, an assistant rushed into the chamber carrying a communication device. His scales were pale with fear as he approached the High Overlord's throne. Forgive the interruption, he gasped, but we've just received emergency messages from 3 outer rim systems. They're being attacked. The great display screens around the chamber lit up with incoming reports. The Kepler system, home to important mining operations. The Vega colony, a major farming world. The Proxima station, a vital communications relay. All 3 were reporting the same thing. Unknown ships had appeared without warning and were methodically destroying Imperial installations. How many ships? High Overlord Vexathura demanded. Unknown, the assistant replied. The attackers are using the same technology the Admiral described. They appear and disappear without warning. Our forces can't get weapon locks on them. More reports flooded in over the next hour. 7 systems being attacked. 12 military bases destroyed. An entire patrol fleet wiped out in the Altar system without managing to fire a single shot in return. The attacks were coordinated, accurate, and utterly devastating. They're not just attacking randomly, Vexar realized as he studied the pattern of strikes. They're targeting our logistics network, communication relays, supply depots, fuel stations. They're trying to separate our forces from each other. High Overlord Timos was working her own tactical display, her expression growing more troubled by the minute. If they continue at this rate, they'll cripple our ability to coordinate a response within days. Impossible. High Overlord, Zanari argued. They're only one race. We have ships in 1,000 systems, but our ships can't fight an enemy they can't see, Vexar pointed out. And the humans seem to know exactly where to strike for maximum effect. They're not wasting time on heavily defended positions. They're going after soft targets that are crucial to our operations. The communication systems in the chamber began, ringing with priority alerts as more reports arrived. The scope of the human assault was becoming clear. This wasn't a random attack or a desperate strike by a cornered race. This was a carefully planned military campaign designed to bring down the Empire's 3,000-year dominance. Sir, another assistant approached High Overlord Vexthera. We're receiving a transmission addressed to the High Command. The source appears to be human. Put it through, she ordered grimly. The central display resolved into the image of Commander Chin, looking exactly as calm and confident as she had when facing Vexitar's fleet. Behind her, human technicians worked at stations that seemed to be processing massive amounts of data in real time. "Greetings, High Overlords of the Zathy Empire," Chen said politely. "I am Commander Sarah Chen, speaking on behalf of the Terran Federation. I thought it was time we had a proper conversation." "You dare attack the Empire?" High Overlord Zenkari snarled. "We will crush you like the insects you are." Chen's expression didn't change. "You tried that once before, High Overlord. How did that work out for you?" "What do you want?" High Overlord Vexathera asked, cutting off Zanari's angry response. "Justice," Chen replied simply. 300 years ago, your empire committed mass murder against my race. You destroyed our worlds, killed our people, and tried to erase us from existence. We want you to answer for those crimes. The expansion of the empire is the natural order." High Overlord Tamas declared. "Lesser races must give way to greater ones. It is the law of nature." "Is it?" Chen asked. "Then you won't mind if we apply that same law to you. After all, we seem to have evolved beyond your ability to stop us." The truth of those words hit the chamber like a physical strike. The humans were demonstrating their superiority in the most direct way possible by defeating Imperial forces with easy confidence. "You cannot defeat the entire empire," High Overlord Vexathara said. But there was uncertainty in her voice. "We're not trying to defeat the empire," Chen corrected. "We're trying to free it." "What does that mean?" Chen smiled. And for the first time, Vexar saw genuine warmth in the expression. "It means we're giving every race you've conquered the same gift you gave us, the gift of hardship, the motivation to become something better than they were." As she spoke, the display behind her lit up with star charts showing Imperial space. But these charts were different from any the overlords had seen before. They showed supply lines, communication networks, political tensions, and economic dependencies. They showed the Empire's infrastructure in more detail than the Empire's own strategists possessed. "For 300 years, we've been doing more than just preparing to fight you," Chen continued. "We've been making contact with every race you've oppressed, every rebel group you've crushed, every resistance movement you've driven underground. We've been sharing our technology, our tactics, our knowledge. We've been teaching them the same lessons you taught us." The implications were staggering. If the humans had been secretly supporting resistance movements throughout the Empire, if they had been sharing advanced technology with conquered races, the attacks on our outer systems, BX-Star whispered. "Those aren't just human ships." "Very good, Admiral." Chen nodded with approval. "Some of them are human ships, yes, but others are ships crewed by Altarians who remember the bombardment of their home world. Vegan survivors who haven't forgotten the slave camps. Korak refugees whose children were taken for Imperial experiments. They've all been waiting for this moment, Admiral. The moment when they could strike back." The chamber erupted in chaos as the overlords began shouting orders. "Activate the fleets. Secure the core systems. Start the emergency protocols." But Vexar could see the fear in their eyes. They were beginning to understand that this wasn't just a military attack. It was a revolution. "You've made a mistake," High Overlord Vexa said, struggling to maintain her composure. "You've united your enemies against a common threat. Now every race in the galaxy will see that the Empire can be defeated." "Yes," Chen agreed cheerfully. "That was rather the point. You see, High Overlords, the Empire's greatest weakness was always its arrogance. You believed that superior technology and overwhelming force could maintain order forever. But you forgot the most important lesson of evolution. When the environment changes, those who cannot adapt become extinct. And you think you can adapt better than we can?" High Overlord Zanari challenged. "I know we can," Chen replied. "Because we've already done it once. 300 years ago, you nearly exterminated us. Instead, you made us stronger. You gave us the motivation to become something you couldn't defeat. Now, we're returning the favor." The transmission ended, leaving the overlords staring at blank screens while emergency reports continued to flood in from across the Empire. Rebellion on Altar, slave uprising on Vega, the entire Corfax system in revolt, communications lost with the Proxima sector. Vexar looked around the chamber at the faces of beings who had ruled the galaxy for 3 millennia and saw something he had never expected to see. Fear. Not just fear of military defeat, but fear of irrelevance. Fear that their time was ending. "What are your orders?" he asked quietly. High Overlord Vexathera was silent for a long moment, her ancient mind processing the scope of the crisis facing the Empire. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of 3,000 years of absolute power that was suddenly no longer absolute. "Recall all fleets to the core systems," she ordered. "Prepare for defensive warfare and send word to every system in the Empire. The humans have returned and they're not alone." As Vexar left the chamber to carry out his orders, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was witnessing the end of an age. The Empire that had seemed eternal was revealing itself to be just another civilization that had grown too comfortable, too confident, too sure of its own superiority. The humans had learned from their defeat and become stronger. Now it was the Empire's turn to learn the same lesson. But Vexar wondered if they would prove to be as good students as humanity had been. The hunter had become the hunted, and the galaxy would never be the same. 2 years had passed since the first human ships had emerged from the quarantine zone, and the galaxy was unrecognizable. Admiral Vexar, now holding the lesser title of System Commander, stood in the ruins of what had once been the Empire's greatest shipyard. Around him, teams of mixed races worked together to salvage what they could from the massive construction facilities that had once built the Empire's warships. The irony was not lost on him. Altarian engineers worked alongside former Imperial technicians. Vegan scientists shared information with Zathy researchers. Korak laborers took orders from human supervisors without complaint or conflict. The races that had been enemies for millennia were now cooperating as if they had always been allies. "Commander Vexar," a voice called behind him. He turned to see Commander Chen approaching, her uniform now showing the insignia of the Galactic Confederation. Over the past 2 years, she had become something of a legend throughout known space, the human who had brought down the Empire without destroying it. "Commander Chen," he replied, offering the respectful bow that had become customary in their interactions. "I didn't expect to see you here." "I wanted to check on the reconstruction progress," she said, looking around at the bustling work sites. "And I wanted to talk to you about something." They walked together through the facility, past workers of many different races, all focused on the same goal, building something new from the wreckage of the old. It was a scene that would have been impossible during the Empire's reign, when each race had been kept strictly separated and controlled. "You could have destroyed us," Vexar said quietly as they walked. "Your fleets, your technology, your allies. You could have wiped out every Zathy in the galaxy, and no one would have questioned your right to revenge." Chen nodded thoughtfully. "Yes, we could have. Many of our allies wanted us to. The Altarians especially were eager to see your race suffer as theirs had suffered. But that would have made us no better than the Empire we were fighting. Then why didn't you?" "Because destruction is easy," Chen replied. "Creation is hard. Anyone can tear down an empire. Building something better in its place takes wisdom, patience, and hope. We had learned those lessons during our exile." They stopped at an observation platform that overlooked the main construction bay. Below them, the skeleton of a new kind of ship was taking shape. It incorporated design elements from every major race in the galaxy, a fusion of technologies that represented cooperation rather than conquest. "The first ship of the Confederation fleet," Chen explained, "built by representatives of every race using the best ideas from all our cultures. It's a symbol of what we can accomplish when we work together instead of fighting each other." Vexar studied the vessel with professional interest. It was unlike anything he had ever seen, clearly designed for exploration and peaceful contact rather than conquest and control. "What will you call her?" "The New Dawn," Chen replied. "The first of many, we hope. And what of my people? What place do the Zathy have in this new order?" Chen turned to look at him directly, her expression serious. "The same place as every other race. You'll be judged by your actions from now on, not by your past. Some of your people have already proven themselves valuable allies, you among them." It was true. Despite everything that had happened, some Zathy had adapted to the new reality with surprising grace. They had shared their advanced technology willingly, contributed their expertise to reconstruction efforts, and proven that they could work alongside former subjects as equals rather than masters. "Not all of my people see it that way," Vexar admitted. "There are still those who dream of restoring the Empire, who believe this is all temporary." "I know," Chen said sadly. "We've been monitoring the resistance movements. The stubborn loyalists who refuse to accept that the old ways are gone forever, but they're becoming fewer every day. Most Zathy are discovering that cooperation brings better results than domination. A sound from Chen's communication device interrupted their conversation. She listened to the brief message, then smiled. Good news. The Korak delegation has agreed to join the Confederation officially. That makes 47 races who have chosen to participate in the new government. And how many have chosen isolation instead? 12 so far, Chen replied, including the Zathy core worlds. They've withdrawn from galactic politics entirely, choosing to focus on their own internal affairs rather than engage with the Confederation. Vexatar felt a pang of sadness at the thought of his home world turning inward, rejecting the changes, sweeping through the galaxy. But he understood the decision. For many of his people, accepting the new order meant acknowledging that everything they had believed about their superiority was wrong. That was a difficult truth to face. What about the Empire's old territories, he asked. The systems that were too small or weak to maintain independence? Most have joined the Confederation as well, Chen explained. We are not interested in ruling them the way the Empire did. Each member world maintains its autonomy and makes its own decisions about internal affairs. The Confederation only handles intersystem disputes, trade regulations, and mutual defense. They began walking again, heading toward the administrative section of the facility. Along the way, they passed memorials to the races that had been lost during the Empire's expansion, entire civilizations that had been wiped out. Their only remembrance now these simple monuments to their existence. Do you ever regret it? Vexar asked suddenly. The way you brought down the Empire, the chaos and suffering that followed. Chen stopped walking and was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of difficult decisions made in impossible circumstances every day. She admitted war always brings suffering, even when it's justified. Innocent beings died in the fighting. Families were separated. Entire worlds had to rebuild from scratch when their imperial administrators fled. I carry the responsibility for all of that, but you do it again. Yes, she said without hesitation, because the alternative was worse. The Empire was a cancer that was slowly consuming the galaxy. Every year it continued to exist meant more races conquered, more cultures destroyed, more beings enslaved. We had to act. They reached the Memorial Garden, a quiet space filled with plants from worlds throughout the galaxy. At its center stood a simple stone monument bearing names in hundreds of different scripts, the races that had been lost to imperial expansion over the millennia. This is why we fought, Chen said, placing her hand on the monument. Not for revenge, though we certainly wanted that. We fought to make sure this never happened again, to create a galaxy where no single race could dominate all the others. And you believe the Confederation will be different? I believe it has a better chance, Chen replied. The Empire's mistake was thinking that unity could be imposed through force. The Confederation is based on voluntary cooperation and mutual benefit. If it fails, it will be because the races involved chose to make it fail, not because they were forced to accept something against their will. As they walked back toward the main complex, Vexar reflected on how much had changed in such a short time. The galaxy that had once trembled before imperial fleets now bustled with free trade and open communication between races. Wars still occurred, but they were local conflicts rather than campaigns of conquest. Most importantly, no single power dominated the others. There's something I've been curious about, BX-Star said as they reached the transport platform, the quarantine zone that contained your space. How did you maintain it for 3 centuries without the Empire noticing what was really happening? Chen smiled mischievously. Trade secret, but I will say this. The Empire's own arrogance was our greatest ally. You convinced yourselves that the zone was empty, so you never looked closely enough to see what was really there. Sometimes the best hiding place is in plain sight. And now we don't need to hide anymore. Terran space is no longer forbidden. It's open to anyone who comes in peace. We've gone from being the galaxy's greatest secret to being one of its founding members. As Vexar's transport lifted off to return him to his duties, he looked back at the construction facility where former enemies worked side by side to build a better future. It wasn't the galaxy he had grown up in. It wasn't the universe he had served faithfully for decades. But perhaps that wasn't such a bad thing. The Empire had taught the galaxy many lessons over its 3,000-year reign. It had shown that superior technology could overcome numerical disadvantages. It had demonstrated that organization and discipline could triumph over chaos and disorder. It had proven that a single vision, ruthlessly implemented, could reshape entire sectors of space. But in the end, the Empire had also taught its greatest lesson by example, that arrogance and inflexibility were fatal weaknesses, that treating other races as inferior would eventually create enemies capable of bringing down even the mightiest civilization. That true strength came not from domination, but from cooperation. The humans had been excellent students of that lesson. They had taken everything the Empire taught them about technology, about organization, about the importance of unity, and had used it to create something better, something that enhanced rather than suppressed the diversity that made the galaxy so rich and fascinating. As his transport approached his new headquarters, Vexar opened a communication channel to the Confederation Council chambers on New Geneva, the human world that had become the informal capital of the new order. "Commander Chen," he said when her image appeared on screen, "I've been thinking about our conversation today." "What about it?" "You said that destruction is easy and creation is hard. I think I'm finally beginning to understand what you meant." Chen's smile was warm and genuine. "Understanding is the first step toward wisdom, Commander. And wisdom is what we'll need if we're going to make this new galaxy work." The transmission ended, leaving Vexar alone with his thoughts as his transport descended toward the landing platform. Around him, the lights of a dozen different races' ships moved through the traffic patterns, carrying goods and passengers between worlds that had once been forbidden from direct contact. The Empire was gone, but its legacy lived on. Not in monuments to conquest or archives of conquered races, but in the hard-won knowledge that the galaxy was vast enough for all its children to thrive. The Terran Federation had kept its promise. They had created something greater from the ashes of what had been destroyed. The galaxy's everything had been lost to the Empire's arrogance, just as the humans had warned. But from that loss, something far greater had been born. A galaxy where strength was measured not by how many worlds you could conquer, but by how many races you could call friends. It was a lesson worth learning, even if it had taken the destruction of an empire to teach.